massive controversy breaking out in Russia. The WNBA's Brittney Griner was convicted Thursday in Russia of drug possession and smuggling and sentenced to 9 years behind bars in a politically charged case that could lead to a high-stakes prisoner exchange between Washington and Moscow, according to the Associated Press. The 31-year-old Griner, two-time U.S. Olympic champion, eight-time All-Star with the WNBA's Phoenix Mercury, listened with a blank expression as an interpreter translated the verdict by Judge Anna Sotnikova. Her lawyer said she was very upset. Griner was fined 1 million rubles, is about $17,000. Outside the court, the U.S. Embassy Chargé d'Affaires Elizabeth Root called the outcome a miscarriage of justice. She's been detained since February 17th after the police said they found vape cartridges containing cannabis oil in her luggage upon landing in Moscow's airport. She was returning to Russia, where she has competed since 2014. The 9-year sentence was close to the maximum of 10 years Griner had faced under the charges. Most Russians possessing small quantities of drugs get at most 5 years in prison. Griner apologized to her family, teammates, and the Russian city of Yekaterinburg, where she plays in the WNBA offseason. Here she was apologizing yesterday.
I want to apologize to my teammates, my club, Gemka, the fans, and the city of ECAT for my mistake that I made and the embarrassment that I brought onto them. I want to also apologize to my parents, my siblings, my Phoenix Mercury organization back at home, the amazing women of the WNBA, and my amazing spouse back at home. I never meant to hurt anybody. I never meant to put in jeopardy the Russian population. I never meant to break any laws here. I made an honest mistake, and I hope that in your ruling that it doesn't end my life here.
Okay, so the idea that Russia is prosecuting her for bringing a fairly small amount of drugs into the country obviously raises political questions. Does this mean that she's a political prisoner in the same way that say, many other people in Russia are political prisoners? Seems doubtful to me. She did, in fact, violate drug law. She is not a person who's being put in jail because of her politics. The idea here from the United States, presumably, is that she is being held by the Russians as a sort of bargaining chip. But again, the reality of Brittney Griner as compared with some of the other Americans who are being detained is not quite the same thing. So Brittney Griner is not the only person who's being held in custody over what would be minor charges. There's another person whose name is Whelan, who has been arrested in Russia as well. He was arrested for the crime of apparently resisting arrest after some sort of drunken brawl with the cops. As Paul Whelan. He's been imprisoned in Russia on an espionage conviction, which again that one seems pretty wild. Like, I'm not sure what the case is for espionage. The Biden administration, nonetheless, has been talking about actually trading active arms dealers to the Russians to get back Griner and Whelan. That seems like a massive mistake. I mean, trading away actively dangerous criminals for people who have committed minor drug crimes or resisting arrest crimes in Russia. The question as to whether that's in America's interest. I mean, there's no question that Griner actually committed the crime. I mean, she said that she committed the crime. It doesn't mean that Russia isn't discriminating against her or attempting to use her as a political pawn, but it is to suggest that this is not quite the same thing as a pure political prisoner situation. Griner's agent Lindsay Kawaga-Kola said the sentence was severe by Russian legal standards and goes to prove what we have known all along: Brittney is being used as a political pawn. A conviction is usually needed before arranging a prisoner exchange and also allows Griner to apply for a pardon. Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov said last month the necessary judicial procedures must be completed before other steps can be taken. The U.S. State Department had earlier declared Griner to be wrongfully detained, a charge that Russia has sharply rejected. She said that she pled guilty, by the way, on the charges against her. She had no intention of breaking any Russian law. Griner described a confusing scene while being held at the airport, saying an interpreter provided by authorities translated only a fraction of what was being said to her and that officials told her to sign documents without explaining what they were. She said she was not informed of her rights. Her lawyers introduced evidence that Griner was using medical cannabis for chronic pain and injuries sustained during her career, included a letter from her doctor. Griner said she knew the cannabis oil was outlawed in Russia and had not intended to break the law or plan to smuggle anything into Russia. But of course, she did smuggle something into Russia. Again, I mentioned here that the Secretary of State Antony Blinken has said that Washington has offered to trade away a convicted Russian arms dealer named Victor Bout for both Whelan and Griner. Russian media have speculated that Griner could be swapped for Bout, nicknamed the Merchant of Death. He is serving a 25-year sentence in the United States after being convicted of conspiracy to kill American citizens and provide aid to a terrorist organization. Russia has agitated for Bout's release for years. That seems like a bad swap to me. I mean, I'm sorry, that just does not seem like a good swap. We're not talking about trading a convicted drug trafficker like Konstantin Yaroshenko for Trevor Reed, right? That was a former U.S. Marine detained in Russia. You're talking about trading away a guy who actually was convicted of terrorism and attempts to aid and abet terrorism for a basketball player who knew that she was bringing an illegal drug into Russia. Joe Biden put out a statement saying, quote, "Today, American citizen Brittney Griner received a prison sentence that is one more reminder of what the world already knew. Russia is wrongfully detaining Brittney. It's unacceptable. I call on Russia to release her immediately so she can be with her wife, loved ones, friends, and teammates. My administration will work to tirelessly and pursue every possible avenue to bring Brittney and Paul Whelan home safely as soon as possible." Now, here's the thing. There are actually people who are being detained in Russia for political purposes, and you don't know their names. You know Brittney Griner's name because she's a basketball player in a league that nobody watches. But you don't know some of the names of people like Vladimir Kara-Murza. And he's a Washington Post contributing columnist who happens to be anti-Putin. According to the Washington Post editorial board, he was arrested in Moscow in April on a sham charge of disobeying the police, then indicted on a charge of public dissemination of knowingly false information about the Russian military. Now, Kara-Murza's lawyer says the authorities are preparing yet another bogus charge, this time for participating in a non-governmental organization deemed undesirable in Russia under a law first approved in 2015. Kara-Murza still hasn't been indicted on the charge. His lawyers said they know little more, but they know the method. In an endless carousel of arbitrary prosecutions, the same approach has been employed to unjustly imprison Alexei Navalny, Russia's most prominent opposition figure, and most recently, Ilya Yashin, an opposition leader accused of spreading false information about the military, reportedly for discussing on his YouTube channel the killing of civilians in Bucha, Ukraine by Russian troops. On July 8th, a Moscow court sentenced local politician Alexei Goranov to 7 years in prison under the same provision. Goranov said in court, "I'm convinced this war is the fastest route to dehumanization. When the line between good and evil is blurred, war is always violence and blood, torn bodies and severed limbs. It's always death. I do not accept this and reject it." Andrei Soldatov and Irina Borogan, Russian journalists who have written often in Foreign Affairs, say that the Federal Security Service, or SSB, has been turned into far more expansive arm of the increasingly ruthless state. There have been over 16,400 detentions of people taking a stance against the war in Ukraine since it began. But we're supposed to focus all of our ire on the detention of a basketball player who plays in Russia apparently every year and brought drugs into the country. Like, two things can be true at once. Russia is detaining this person for far too long, and also, why are we trading arms dealers for a person who commits drug crimes in Russia? This does not seem like the best available deal. How's this for a title? Ben Shapiro Show subscriber destroys like button with clicks and logic. I'd watch that. Make it happen, gang.